Hey everybody, it's Kelly. Welcome back to another episode of Ask a Therapist. Today we're talking about second adolescence. My first adolescence was hot garbage, and my second one wasn't all that much better. Second adolescence first gained its popularity as a phrase in people's 50s-ish when they started to have doubts about who they were. They started to explore other things. They started to have raging hormones as hormones changed in their lives. Not dissimilar to what we used to call a midlife crisis. Second adolescence makes a lot more sense. In our context, second adolescence means when you start dating and start interacting with people as your fully formed or, newly formed or newly out queer self. This is an experience that is very specific to queer people. Those in the LGBTQIA plus community often, not everyone, but the majority don't actually have an opportunity to live who they are during their first adolescence. So you go through your first adolescence where you're discovering who you are and understanding your friendships and how they define you or how they don't define you. And you're trying to figure out your attraction or lack thereof to the people that you're supposed to be attracted to, where you're experimenting with yourself and your body and understanding all of those things for the first time. All of it's brand new, which makes all of the emotions deeper. And for most queer people, we do all of that the first time hiding. While we are hiding who we are, either actively or inactively because we don't know yet, but we are going through the motions of what is understood to be the hallmarks of adolescence. We're going through all those emotions, not authentically as ourselves. We are living as we are told to live and not necessarily as we want to live. I want you to think about what you'd consider a developmental milestone during adolescence. What is it? Your first crush? The first time you disobey your parents' rules and break curfew? Getting in trouble with your friends? Sleepovers? Parties? Getting your driver's license? Your first kiss? Almost all of those experiences as a queer person are done with a mask on. Almost all of them. The understanding of a developmental milestone is in and of itself taken from a heterosexual, cisgender viewpoint. It just is. Those hallmarks of adolescence, so many of them are about interpersonal interaction and interaction with ourself and understanding ourself in the lens of other people. And all of that is done in our teens through the lens of heteronormativity. As a teenager, you very seldom possess the ability to go against the grain 100%. So even if you are out as a teen, you're very likely finding other like-minded teens so that you can experience things somewhat similarly. Now that also means pretty much everyone you're experiencing that with is in that circle. So you don't have like friends that you can then debrief with later. You have exes that you debrief with later once romantic developmental things happen. That doesn't really help you debrief super well. This understanding of our second adolescence, of our redo of our adolescence, comes further into your adult life when you are able to self-actualize and give yourself the permission to go on dates or be attracted to who you're attracted to or verbalize the fact that you're not attracted to people. Any of those things don't actually get to happen for most people within the LGBTQIA plus community until you are on your own and an adult and able to support yourself, because you can't risk not having the safety and the support by coming out completely the way that you want to be when you're, financially independent like a teenager is. Then you've got this second adolescence that you go through where you're having your first kiss with someone you're actually attracted to, or you're having your first date with someone where the relationship stands a chance of lasting because they are who you are attracted to. Your first time feeling comfortable with the clothes that you have on your body because they represent to the broader world outside of you and your safety net of friends who you actually are and not who you always knew yourself to be on the inside but couldn't let it out because heteronormativity. Your first time identifying with the media that you consume. For so many of us, there was nothing available in the media last time we were going through adolescence, so we couldn't see ourselves or our relationships played out on the screen, big or little, the way that we needed to in order to be able to identify that's what I want in a relationship, or that's not what I want in a relationship, or whatever's in between there. We weren't able to do that the first time around. So you need your second time around to be able to allow yourself to see and act out who you want to be. Sometimes this second adolescence is the first time a queer person actually has a group of friends or a support community that allows them to be who they are. Maybe they reflect who they are back to them and maybe they don't. I don't know. But you have a community of people who just want you to be happy and maybe will help you to continue to define yourself as you evolve as a person. But so many of us didn't have that the first time again. So we were always propping friends up and doing that sort of thing in our friend group, or our friends were maybe doing it for us in the wrong way, not through any fault of theirs, but because we didn't know how to ask for what we needed. The potentially negative part of our second queer adolescence is the fact that you are an adult with things to lose, with the ability to support yourself, with the ability to go ahead and do the things you want to do. So when you were a teenager and you had that online relationship with someone who lives 4 states away and you couldn't just get in the car and drive 4 states away, well, when you're an adult, no one is telling you can't. So where before there might have been some actual like breaks built in and rest stops and breathing room for you to have in your relationships, when it felt so intense and so new and so just overpowering, that break doesn't exist anymore because there's no one telling you you can't get in your car and drive 4 states away. Who's going to tell you you can't? You call it a work and you go. The problem is without those built-in checks and balances that are there the first time our hormones go rushing and make us so intense on the relationships in front of us, without having those there, relationships can get very intense very, very quickly. And when they do, we tend to skip over steps. We skip over the getting to know each other, the first fight. Or when the first fight comes, it feels so much more
desperate and intense and terrifying.
Because you found yourself in this relationship in a way that you never did in the past, maybe. Or just so differently, and you feel like you're respected and loved so differently that you can't imagine not having this in your life. This is what makes this hard, though. When you are in your second adolescence and you have all of these things happening, it is very easy to get involved in a relationship that could be abusive. It's easier to get involved in a relationship where you are not your best self, or they are not their best selves, or you're not mutually respecting each other in the way that an adult relationship should be. Because by the time you're an adult, you've learned things about yourself, right? You've learned what you do and don't want, and you've learned how you do and don't want to be treated. You've learned some of the foibles of yourself and the ways that a lot of times your past impacts your current relationships. But if you mix that and that learning with the crazy rush of emotion and hormones that happen during adolescence, which part of you wins? I mean, really, which part of you wins? The rational side that says,
I don't want to be spoken to like this?
Or the side that says,
oh, they won't speak to me like that forever. It's just how they are now because they're passionate.
Do you hear the difference in those statements? But these are both statements that totally grown adults have made when they're in their second adolescence. I don't want you to hear me like this is something that's terrible and destructive to yourself and to your future. You just need to be aware. You need to be aware that sometimes you have to pump the brakes on a relationship. Sometimes you have to give yourself that breathing space, that processing space. Check in with your friends. Check in with your family members. Check in with somebody about other things in life besides your partner. If you find your time being overly consumed, if you're hearing from your friends and your family members, ones you trust, by the way, not just any friend or family member, but the ones that you trust and believe in to give you the good feedback you need. If you're hearing from them that they don't see you anymore, or you're hearing from them that they're concerned about this, or they might have, I don't know, thoughts about your relationship, tune into that. You can decide whether to take their advice or not. It's really up to you. I'm not in your relationship. I'm just saying these are the built-in kind of guardrails that we have to make sure we don't go too far one side or the other into what could be a destructive relationship. Because then, in conjunction with dismantling all of the heteronormativity and cisnormativity and compulsory heterosexuality that we've dealt with in our lives, you're also piling on the baggage of a queer relationship that didn't work and left you with a lot of questions about queer relationships. Because that just compounds, and that becomes where do I go for these answers? Where do I go to understand these things? And we don't have a lot of places that you can go to understand these things, which creates the most bizarre catch-22 I think I've encountered yet. So there you are, now you're aware. Second, queer adolescence is a very normal, very natural, very necessary thing as you come into your own of who you are. It is also something that you need to be aware of and you need to be on the lookout for, to not let your hormones and the rush of understanding and the intensity of the relationship take you down a road that doesn't match who you want to be. Because you get to decide who you are and how you want to be that person. That's it for today. Thank you so much for being here. Have a great one, and I'll see you next time. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other.